Brett Bielema, Illini football continue to be red hot in recruiting.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny Verma. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure you've hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. You all have to hit that like button because right now the vibes in Champaign, whether you're a football fan or a basketball fan, they are sky high right now. I say this all the time on the show. It's a good time to be an Illini. Before I get started, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So I actually had a different episode planned and basically recorded, but I wanted to scrap that real quick because an episode I had planned for later, talking about the Illini football recruiting the weekend that they just had, and just the prowess that they're making. Well, as I was recording the previous episode, Illinois just landed a new commitment. 3-star edge rusher Jacob Alexander, 6'4", 245 pounds. Illinois now lands its second top 15 Illinois talent from the state, and it's just remarkable to see where we've come from, right? The last couple of years for Lovey just simply stopped recruiting the state. Now, Illinois, Jacob is one of those players who was one of the juniors who was on campus this past weekend. I mean, Nazir Rankin was here, Max Sutter was here, J.C. Anderson was here. We all saw them at the basketball game, just enjoying the environment and basically trying to get won over by this Brett Bielema and coaching staff. And right now, Brett Bielema is on fire. And we're going to talk about this later on with Ted from the Big Ten TED Show. But Alexander chose Illinois over these offers: Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Missouri, Louisville, Kansas, Kansas State, and Cincinnati. These aren't the MAC schools that Illinois used to be beating team players for. Illinois is fighting with the best and getting the best. Right now, the reputation of the school and the program is just growing by year. And I'm telling you, it isn't stopping. We are on pace right now for Illinois to have its best recruiting year in maybe 20 years, if not more. And I got something else that Illini fans are going to love hearing. Listen to this quote by Alexander. "I have everything I need right down the road. No need to go rep another state when I have everything at home." How long have us Illini football fans been waiting for Illinois to be the top target of the local talent? It's became tiresome to lose your best prep players to Michigan, to Notre Dame, to Wisconsin, to Iowa. Right now, it's the other programs who used to look at battling Illinois and not be sweating in the least bit. But now they know that if they're in for a player and Brett and the staff is in for the player, well, you know what? They're going to have to kick it up a notch. Previous Illinois recruiting classes have been okay, decent, let's just say. But that's kind of the calling card of Brett Bielema. Even when he was the head coach at Wisconsin, he wasn't necessarily getting top 15 classes each and every year. What Brett is known to do is he develops that talent. Whether it's a top 35 recruiting class, what he's going to do is make sure a majority of those players in that class at least reach their potential, if not higher. And that's kind of what he's doing here. Just think about it. Brett Bielema has had recruiting classes in the 50s and the 40s here at Illinois. And Illinois just finished the season where they won 10 games and lost only 3, coming off a bowl game, a Citrus Bowl game victory over South Carolina. This stuff is not just being noticed by the national media or college football fans. This stuff is getting noticed by the future college football players. And I'm telling you, Jacob is not the last one. In fact, we might be having another one come up very soon. I'm not in the business of crystal balls because that's not my area of expertise. So I don't want to steal other people's content or, try to take credit for something that is not mine. But there are a couple relationships out there that I do have. And so I do know that Illinois is in close with some of the top prospects in the state. And if you're an everydayer in here, you know which ones I'm talking about. But again, I'm talking about there's a potential of 3, if not 4, maybe even 5 4-star talents that Illinois is going to be bringing into Champaign in that 2026 class. I'm super excited. You all should be. A lot of us are mainly basketball fans, but we'll follow football when it tends to do well. I can't say this enough. As much as we are a basketball school, football brings in the money, and football is what's important for Illinois to establish itself at. And quite honestly, with Wisconsin struggling, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later with Ted, with Wisconsin struggling and some of the other peers of Illinois struggling, now is the time for Illinois to really jump up a couple levels. And I'm telling you, as great of a season as Illinois just had last year, my biggest complaint was just and when it came to recruiting, I wasn't sure who the next stars of Illini football were going to be. But I really do think that the class of 2026 has the potential to have a handful of those future stars that are going to be wearing the orange and blue. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of the Super Bowl 59. And welcome back. We're having Illini Discourse each and every day in the Locked On Illini Discord. So find the link in the description of this channel and come converse with your fellow Illini. The day does say Tuesday, so of course that means I'm bringing on my good friend Ted. Ted, thanks for joining us one more time.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be here. We got a while till we kick things off, but it's we're gonna keep on coming as long as you'll have me. I'll be here. So always excited.
Oh yeah, open invite. You know that, Ted. So obviously the season itself is over. But the drama seems to have just started with other teams in the Big Ten Conference, which we'll kind of get to in a little bit. But I saw that you recently tweeted a way too early Big Ten power rankings for next season. Now, Illinois fans, we're, I think, very optimistic about next season and what our team's going to look like. We're talking about returning 16 starters, 18 starters from that bowl game. I'm curious, how do you see the Big Ten looking next year?
Not only did I tweet it, I talked about it for about 45 minutes on Monday as well. So if people want to go check that out, I ended up looking at the clock and I'm like, oh man, I just talked for about 40 minutes about this thing. So I kind of got blurbs about every team in the Big Ten out there as well. But, as we kind of look at this thing, of course, I'll first talk about the Illini since this is an Illinois program. I had them slotting in at number 5 in my way too early Big Ten power rankings. Probably going to do another one right around springtime and then another one kind of before the season is probably how it's going to go. But this is an Illinois team that brings back as much experience back. I'm not certainly going to say, the talent levels, we know Penn State's, Ohio State's, Oregon's, those types of teams are, of course, going to be at the top. But when you talk about the sheer numbers of players that are returning, Illinois is they're running it all the way back with everybody next year. Of course, it starts with the signal caller, Luke Altmyer, who I thought made this doesn't get talked about a ton, but I thought he made a pretty sizable jump from his first year as a starter at Illinois to his second year. He really did a great job protecting the football this season, which we love. Of course, at Illinois. But you look at that defense, Gabe Jacas is going to come back. Xavier Scott's going to come back. There's a lot of guys that are going to be coming back on that defense. And I talked about it in the show. I thought Aaron Henry, of course, he was a former defensive back under Brett Bielema when he played at Wisconsin and now the defensive coordinator this could be his masterpiece in terms of a secondary. I think this year, I think there's a lot of talent in that room to be able to maybe rival what we saw in 2022. I know that is an extremely high bar, right? You've got one of those guys playing, Sidney Brown's playing for the Eagles right now. He's going to be playing in a Super Bowl. Of course, you had Devin Witherspoon, guy who was drafted as high as he was. I know those are high bars and high expectations, but we're not doing the offseason right if we don't get hyped up in January, right? So, but I think, I thought that secondary was really good last year. And then the amount of guys that are coming back. And of course, Aaron Henry, right? The constant through 2022, 2023. You can keep on going down the line. He's been the constant, right? And now that we kind of saw what we saw with Ryan Walters over at Purdue, maybe this was kind of a Ryan Walter, I shouldn't say Ryan, an Aaron Henry type of kind of creation to begin with, right? So I think he deserves a lot of credit, and I think this defense is going to be good. I think this offense is going to be good. The thing about Illinois is they got to figure out Pat Bryant replacement, Zachary Franklin replacement. So there's a couple of guys that could maybe slide into there. They got a couple of transfers coming in as well. So I got Illinois sliding in at number 5. I think they're going to be in a playoff contention type of spot, certainly.
That's wild. I don't think any Illini fan will ever complain about 5, especially, considering the teams that you have ahead of them, which, Ted, why don't you just go ahead and name those teams?
Sure. Yep. So the 4 teams that I have ahead of them, I got Penn State at number 1. This is a team that's very much in the mold of 2023 Michigan, 2024 Ohio State. Everybody running it back, right? Aller's coming back. Singleton's coming back. Katron Allen's coming back. You've got Dennis Sutton's coming back. Zaki Wheatley. I mean, the list goes on. And Michigan brought everybody back for one more run to win a championship. Ohio State brought everybody back for a run to win a championship. And I think that's the same with Penn State. This season. I think, we've seen what's happened with them, the last couple of seasons where they haven't been able to get it done. The thing about those Michigan and Ohio State teams, they had a clear purpose to get over an obstacle that was put in front of them. Penn State has that clear purpose, certainly as well, not being able to beat Ohio State, losing in the semifinals, of course, to Notre Dame as well. Ohio State checking in at number 2. This is where things, I think these top 3 teams, Penn State, Ohio State at 2, and then Oregon at 3, I think those are your Big Ten championship contenders, maybe national championship contenders, playoff really contenders type of teams as well. But, hey, you got Jeremiah Smith on offense and Caleb Downs on defense, you'll be okay. Even though you lose your whole D-line, you lose your running back room. Julian Sand is supposed to be fantastic, right? If you've seen his high school tape, you all know, and there's been so much rumblings out of Ohio here this last week or two of how good that he can be. But, Carnell Tate is coming back. There were rumors about maybe him heading over on a transfer to Oregon, but he comes back for a $1 million NIL deal to Ohio State. The wide receiver room is going to be great. Davison Igbinosun is back in the defensive backfield. Now, I think they're going to be a little bit more human this season, right? They seem very superhuman in the postseason last year. And losing those 4 guys up front of the defensive line, I think that's going to be a bigger deal than some people really anticipate. So, and then, of course, you've got the Oregon Ducks right there at number 3. A lot of people think Dante Moore is going to be able to step in and be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, if not the country. Mekhi Hughes transferring in from Tulane. Is back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons. You combine him with Noah Whittington. That's a really good 1-2 punch in the backfield. Evan Stewart is coming back as their wide receiver 1. And there is you want to know, if anybody wants to know who can be Jeremiah Smith 2.0, it might be Decorian Moore next year for the Oregon Ducks. If you watch the Polynesian Bowl going up within amongst 2 people and making just an absolutely crazy catch, he does certainly not have the body frame of Jeremiah Smith, because nobody has the Jeremiah Smith body frame at wide receiver. He's looking at 5'11", 185, 190 type of guy, but he's just got speed on top of speed out there. I expect him to really play a significant role. The offensive line looks good, specifically in the interior for them. The defense, they've got one of the highest graded linebackers in Bryce Betcher that's coming back. They got to replace a lot in the secondary, but they're going to be there, certainly. And then I got Michigan sitting there at number 4. I kind of flirted with Illinois at number 4, and Michigan and Illinois, I think, are pretty comparable and I think are pretty similar right now. But, you got an experienced quarterback in Mikey Keene, and then of course everybody's going to be clamoring for Bryce Underwood throughout this season.
For sure.
So you've got an upgrade certainly at quarterback, and that run game with Justice Haynes coming in from Alabama, and they love Jordan Marshall, a former Mr. Ohio football player in high school. You saw what he was able to do in the bowl game. This is a run game that I think is going to get close to the Blake Corums and the Hassan Haskins and some of these guys that we've seen prior during that three-peat of Big Ten championships in there as well. And then the defense, I know they lose Will Johnson, Kenneth Grand, and Mason Graham and all these guys, but they just kind of churn out good players. Like, go look at that tape against Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl and look at some of these guys. Look at the Rayshon Bennings. Look at the TJ guys. Look at the Derek Moores running it back for one more season. They get two big defensive line transfers as well. Like, this is going to be another really good defense, I think, for Michigan. So I certainly got Michigan in there as well. But that's kind of my top five and how I got it as of right now.
I mean, think about it. As an Illinois fan, the only teams you're projected behind are Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. The quote-unquote blue bloods of the conference. And, Illinois, I think, would take fifth almost every single year, especially in an 18-team conference that this has become. Do you have a minute or two to maybe talk about just rounding up the rest of the Big Ten conference?
Sure.
Is there anyone else that jumps out at you?
Sure, we'll hit some bullet points. I know you're going to love this. I got Indiana one spot behind the Illini of Illinois, but I think Indiana's not going anywhere. Fernando Mendoza coming over. Elijah Surratt is going to be back. They've got Mikhail Kamara, who was really good on the D-line last year. Aiden Fisher, D'Angelo Pons. They've got good players coming in. Their schedule, tougher this season with Illinois on the schedule, Oregon on the schedule, and some of these other teams in there. So Indiana over there at 6. I'd watch out for Minnesota. I had Minnesota checking in at number 9. They have some questions at quarterback, but Darius Taylor returns at running back. They did a really good job in the portal over there at wide receiver. They return a good amount on defense as well. I like Minnesota. I just I maybe would have put them maybe a spot, maybe 2. Higher, maybe not 2, but maybe a spot higher if I would have been if it's a little bit more solidified at quarterback. So I've certainly got them over there as well. I'd watch out for Washington. Washington at number 11. That's a team with really good skill players. Damon Williams is a really good quarterback. They returned a 1,000-yard rusher in Jonah Coleman. Amari Evans, the former Penn State wide receiver, he comes in there with Denzel Boston. Once you get outside of that, there's certainly some things to work on up there in Seattle, but this is maybe a team. Former Illinois defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, is going to be now their defensive coordinator over there. If Washington's formula is like, hey, let's just be a top 5, top 6 offense in the Big Ten and maybe a middle-of-the-road defense that can just make a stop here and there, they can maybe hang with some of these teams over there as well. Wisconsin at number 12, I've got them just behind the Huskies right now. I view Wisconsin as just going around in the hamster wheel, and they're not able to make traction. I mean, we know all about the Xavier Lucas stuff that's happened this offseason. Billy Edwards, he's inconsistent as a Maryland quarterback. You saw it last year. You've kind of seen some ups and downs from him, and that they lost a lot in the transfer portal as well. One other one that I will kind of mention here is Nebraska. I'm kind of jumping around back up. I got them at number 10. Maybe it's just Nebraska fatigue for me over the years, right? I try to, maybe like a lot of other people, I kind of see something, hey, maybe this could be the year. Maybe this could be the year, something like that. But they have the most transfers in the Big Ten other than Purdue, right? They've had it now. When you lose Tony White, your defensive coordinator, I'm sure that plays into it as well. But I don't know if this defense is going to be as good, and we'll see. We'll see how the run game is going to be. How good Emmett Johnson can be. Losing some guys on the offensive line, I'm not sure if this is the offseason for me drinking the Big Red Kool-Aid. Let me just say that right off the bat. I think a lot of things have got to change, I think, for me to maybe get back on that bandwagon as well. But that's kind of just some of that. People can go check it out on Twitter, on YouTube, and podcast platforms for more in-depth detail.
And I'll definitely drop a link in the description of this video. Right after this, we're going to talk about a lot of Big Ten drama that's been going on in this very short offseason so far. This is a message from sponsor Intuit, TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, Ted. So we know the college football and college basketball, just college athletics landscape has been changing drastically over the last couple of years, and it's going to continue to change pretty drastically, probably in the near to distant future. But what I've noticed, where I was surprised by, is just a lot of the infighting that I feel like that's going on in the conference now. You know, there's been price tags of $4.5 million being talked about for a guy like Jeremiah Smith. You're talking about Carnell Tate, which you mentioned earlier, being flirting with Oregon. You know, maybe Oregon throwing their money around a little bit. And then we also have now Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, jumping ship and going east to Penn State. A lot of, Big Ten on Big Ten crime going on right now. So much so, like, I don't necessarily remember this happening like this in the past, but I guess that's just what comes when you expand to 18 teams. And, money's the bottom line, but money, drives everything nowadays. And so everyone's basically just looking out for themselves.
Yeah, and I think this is about Penn State. They're spending money. Like, if you really dive into what's happening with Penn State, it's not just bringing all these players back. It's not just going out. Jim Knowles, it's renovating their stadium, Beaver Stadium right now, spending, I thought it was around $80 million on that. And we know, like, with rev sharing coming up, this is maybe a time to pinch pennies. Not in State College, Pennsylvania. There's boosters in that program that want that program to succeed, right? And they say, hey, what's happened these last handful of years? Yeah, that good? It's not good enough. We want to take it to that next level. And I think that's what you're seeing here at Penn State. Jim Knowles coming in is, he's one of the best in the land. He's going to be the highest paid coordinator in college football, 3 years, around $9-ish million, around an average of $3.1 million a year to be the defensive coordinator over there. Rumblings going around that said Ohio State would have been able to match that, certainly over there as well. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Big Ten right now, they have the schools within the Big Ten Conference, to your point, they have the most money as compared to maybe some of the southern schools. Hey, maybe there's a few, maybe there's, the Texas A&Ms that have a lot of that oil money certainly down there. But compared to maybe some of those in the traditional Deep South and the traditional SEC footprint, Big Ten, and that's where I think we start to see maybe the separation a little bit. There are big money alumni. There are big money boosters that want to see their program succeed. Cite Mr. Ellison getting Bryce Underwood to flip his commitment over to Michigan.
Ellison being a former University of Illinois student.
Right, exactly. Yes. We got to fit that in there. But it's just there's just so much money, I think, going around, and I'm curious to see. I don't know. Well, we might not ever know, but yeah, I'm curious to see what Jim Knowles' thoughts and the explanation would be if that ever would possibly come to fruition, and we're able to hear from that to see what the thinking was. Because now Jim Knowles going to this Penn State team and being a part of this defense with, we mentioned some of the denied Dennis Suttons. I think Kobe King is going to be back at linebacker next year. Like, he's got a better starting point with this Penn State defense than he did, remember, back in 2022 at Ohio State. Because remember the year before he got there. Remember that 2021 non-conference game against Oregon where C.J. Verdell just ran the ball and ran it right down Ohio State's throat and won that game. And then, of course, we know at the end of the year where Michigan was finally able to win. And then that's when Jim Knowles kind of took over, and they just kept on getting better and better and better. And, of course, it all ended with that elite defense, certainly this year, the top defense in college football. So you kind of combine, and look what Penn State's been like. That's just it's a foolproof situation where he's going to go in there and probably make them one of, if not the top defense in the country next season. It's just he's got a lot of toys to certainly play with Penn State over there. So it's a very interesting situation. These two are going to rematch in the first week of November in Columbus, Ohio. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then that's going to be a high stakes environment for everybody involved. Penn State, Ohio State, just in general, is a game that you got to circle on your calendar every single year. And, of course, adding fuel to the fire is certainly going to be fun. But, you look at these defenses the past few years. Brett Pry became a head coach. Manny Diaz became a head coach. And Tom Allen had a really good year. It's just, you can plug anybody into there. But I think it says a lot that Penn State went out and got the best guy in the land. Okay? So that's that says a lot right now. So this is and there's so much pressure continues to mount for James Franklin.
For sure.
Since 2016, what's it been, like almost 10 years now, where he hasn't been able to beat Ohio State, hasn't had success against, didn't have a lot of success against Michigan prior to us going away from divisions and then not being a yearly game anymore. But you got everybody coming back. You got Jim Knowles coming as your defensive coordinator. All this money being flowed into your program. And if they're not able to beat Ohio State, and I know they got that game against Oregon and Happy Valley, like if they fall in those two games, I mean, I know we got this thing called the 12-team college football playoff to maybe save James at that point. But, man, what else can you do? That's what I think these Penn State alumni and boosters and people raising this money says, James, we are going to give you everything you need to be able to succeed. If you can't win with this, I don't know what else we're going to do. So I think that's kind of the feeling in Happy Valley for next year.
Well, I mean, I just think a lot of those folks at Happy Valley saw what happened in Columbus, right? Ohio State last offseason did what Penn State is doing now. All of a sudden, they just rounded up everybody and like, hey, we really need to invest in this program if we want to make it to that next level. Look, our arch rivals up north just won the national championship. That's not acceptable. So, again, they rounded up that treasure chest and, they're spending money. And this year, that's kind of what Penn State is doing. And so, in a way, I kind of respect it. Penn State has always been just that very, very good team, but just one notch below the Michigans and the Ohio States. And this year, they're just gunning for it. And, as you mentioned, getting Jim Knowles not only improves their defense, but it also weakens their main competitor next year. So I think it was a fantastic move by Penn State. And, it's one of those, let's just say I'm very glad that they're not on our schedule next year. And we got taken care of this past year.
Right. Yeah. And one other thing to keep in mind, and there's been rumors floating out there about maybe Chip Kelly getting some NFL offensive coordinator jobs. If both these coordinator jobs come open, Big Ten teams, if you like your coordinator, maybe lock him at the stadium at the facility for a little bit, because that Columbus cash is going to be coming for your coordinator if you really like him. If he's certainly got the resume that Ohio State is looking for. So that's always the thing. We're always focused on, okay, this piece of news just happened, but now what's going to happen on the backside of this? This is the coaching carousel in play and at its finest. So. Hey, they got Chip Kelly. Getting Chip Kelly last year was a big time move for them. So if they got a couple of coordinator openings, Ohio State is going to be swinging for the fences.
All right, Ted, thank you again. Can you let the folks know where they can find your work?
Yeah, you can find me at Big Ten Ted over there on Twitter, YouTube, and your audio podcast platforms as well. So a lot of exciting stuff upcoming, but this was certainly some interesting news here today that we just talked about. So it's we're going to get more of this. There's going to be I think now we're maybe going to really kick into gear with maybe some coaching stuff. We'll see. Maybe this was the first domino to fall, and see how many of these other Big Ten openings we might see.
All right, Ted. See you next week.
All right, sounds good.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. If you haven't already, make sure you've hit that like button and you've subscribed to the channel. We continue to be one of the faster growing channels on the network, and it's all because of you. It's now January 28th. That means we're at about 31 straight days of me creating content on this channel. So if you're a fan of the Illini, or if you know someone else who's a fan of the Illini, please make sure you're tuned into this channel, where I'm going to give you about 25 to 35 minutes of Illini content each and every day. Until next time, ILL, love you guys.